This show is sponsored by Cousins, a true family business.
Welcome everybody to the Amit Kainth Show, and thank you for home and tuning in. Do you ever wonder in life why certain times you get angry with people, or why sometimes certain situations can make you angry, or sometimes in life that you're attracted to certain type of people? Well, today I've got a very special guest who specializes in past life regression, and she can actually hypnotize you and take you into previous lives. She has cured phobia, depression, and all sorts of anger issues. So let's please welcome Liz Vincent.
Hello, Amit.
How are we doing?
How are you?
Good
Fine.
to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Take a seat.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on to the show today, Liz.
Thank you for inviting me, Amit.
You're very welcome. So how long have you now been specializing in this field?
I've been a past life regression therapist for 13 years. It was something I'd read about many, many years ago. I'd read about children in India who were remembering past lives. I'd read about how people could cure phobias, how they could cure pain. For example, somebody might have an illness or something that has anything in, sorry,
Yeah.
that is not connected in this life. So sometimes it's about understanding what it's about. Somebody may have been born, for example, with a pain in their shoulder and have no reason for it. And if you take them into a past life, it could be that perhaps what's happened is they may have been stabbed by somebody and they were holding the sense of anger. Once you take them into a past life and you release the anger, you release the pain.
But most of these things come from childhood, right?
Well, when I work with depression, the cause of depression is 99% childhood issues. And this doesn't mean that you've had a terrible childhood or your parents have been bad people.
Yeah.
It just means that we hold on to things in childhood that we're still holding on to now. So it can be something as simple as somebody bullying you in the playground.
Yes.
And you think you've forgotten it, but there's a part of you still holding anger towards somebody. So when I work with people who are severely depressed, what I do, I tell them, and I use the corridor method, and I say, go and find the root cause of why you're depressed. And they will probably go into a variety of doors. One may be being bullied, one may be watching their parents fight, one may be actually as a baby when they feel abandoned. The parents may well be in the next room, but the baby feels abandoned in some way. So every case is absolutely individual. So actually that's why I never get bored doing this work, because everybody is different.
Yeah.
So it depends. I get a lot of people who come to see me because they want to experience past lives. They want to understand why perhaps they can't form a relationship. Now, often the reason people have difficulty in forming relationships is because in past lives they've made oaths and vows that they will love a certain person forever. I work a lot with people who may have been nuns or priests, and on many different levels. It doesn't have to be a Catholic priest or a nun. It can be anything where you make a vow to obey something like the church. So a nun would be a bride of Christ.
Yes.
So if she's a bride of Christ, then obviously she can't find another person that she can love in this lifetime. If, for example, somebody goes into a lifetime where their husband may have gone off to war, she may have made a vow to that man that she would wait for him forever.
Yes.
Now, if that man was killed in a past life, for example, then she's still waiting for that man. Now, the interesting thing about past life regression is that we have lives as men and lives as women.
Yes.
So you may have made a vow to John in a past life when you were a woman, and you may be waiting forever for this John, who actually may be I don't know, a little girl born in Brazil in this lifetime. So it's very important to get rid of oaths and vows that are actually holding us back.
Wow. Well, you know what? I read, you've also written a book, because
Yes,
I read this last night. It's called Finding the Light. It's actually quite amazing. It's a very, very interesting read. And in here, obviously, you talk about as well that, about forgiving
Yes.
people. And then this is very, very, you talk a lot about that. So tell me more about why is that so important?
Forgiveness is fundamental. When we are angry at somebody else, we're actually angry at ourselves. Now, I work a lot with people who've been severely abused, and they think they're really angry with their abuser, which of course, on some level they are. But if you go into it very deeply, you find that they're actually angry at themselves for having allowed it to happen. Now, you may say that's ridiculous, because how can a 3-year-old stop themselves being abused?
Yeah.
Well, they can't.
Yeah.
But the anger is held towards themselves. And forgiveness is always a 3-way thing. So you're forgiving the person that's hurt you, and it doesn't have to be abuse. It can be any form of
And by
hurt.
doing that, you feel a lot more lighter and able to move on with
it's a
situations.
3-way thing. You have to forgive the person that's hurt you. You have to ask them to forgive you for the anger and resentment you've been sending out towards them. But ultimately, you have to forgive yourself. And once you've done that, you can let it go. So if you imagine a past life where in a war you've hurt somebody or they've hurt you, on some level, that energy is still attached to you, and that anger and resentment is still attached to you.
Yeah.
So by doing past life regression, you're releasing it on many, many different levels.
Wow. And in fact, I was just doing some research over the couple of days, and I found a very interesting case, and you guys can have a look at this as well, but if you just put it into YouTube, Cameron McCauley, he was a boy that lived before, and basically he came back, and he remembered that he was born in Scotland. He remembered that he was born in a place in Barra. And I don't know if you've looked at the case.
Yes, I have.
And he kept saying to his mum and dad that I want to go to Barra, I want to go to Barra. And this boy is only 5-6 years old. Before his parents took him to Barra, he knew that his house was white, where he used to live. He knew that he had a 1-story house. He knew the fact that he was living near the beach. He knew his dad's name was Shane Robertson. And he knew he had a black and white dog. And, he kept saying this all the time, I want to go to Barra, I want to go to Barra. And his parents then eventually then took him to Barra. And at the very outset, they couldn't really find the house where he actually lived. But after doing more research, they then came across the house, and everything he was saying was bang on. And the fact that he was here before, he came in the 1960s, 1970s, and basically when they traced a relative that actually this person, everything that he was saying, he actually lived there before. And so it was, it was really fascinating.
Yeah.
And then, what he got out of that is the fact that when he went to Barra, he got this sense of relief that he was, people understood that actually this is where I was, and he felt better in himself, And this is what Liz Vincent does. It's obviously, I can imagine that when you see people and you take them backwards and they get something out of their system that helps them to move forward. Would you say
Exactly.
That's the case? Yeah.
Yes, it's always about helping that person on some level. We've had hundreds of past lives, but if we have unresolved issues from past lives, they're invariably the ones that come up in a session, because on a deeper level, your subconscious mind is saying, deal with this, deal with this. So this is why it's so fascinating, and it's everybody is so different.
Yeah.
But I work with a lot of people who've been in wars, they've been traumatized, and I also work with phobias. I had a very interesting case sometime last year of a man who was terrified of birds. Now, he had no logical reason to be terrified of birds, but from the day he was born, he didn't want a bird anywhere near him. And we ended up going back into the First World War,
Wow.
where he was in the trenches, he was shot, and he'd injured himself very badly. He saw his colleagues also having died, and they were being eaten by the carrier birds.
Wow.
Carrion birds, I think they're called. And he knew the same thing was going to happen to him because there was nobody who could save him. So as a consequence, he was terrified of birds in this lifetime. So
It's amazing
what we
you can pick
did,
out.
we forgave everything, including the birds, because we also had to forgive them, because after all, they were going to become aggressive to him. And after that, he told me he was dancing around Trafalgar Square, and a bird landed on his shoulder, and once upon a time, he would have been terrified. And he thought, oh, a bird's landed on my shoulder. So you can let go of all of this when you get to the root cause of it.
Well, it's been amazing having you on, Liz, and we can actually go on for hours, and I enjoy your company, but that's all we've got time for today. So we're going to take a small break. Don't go too far. We're back within 5 minutes. Thank you very much. Welcome back to the Amit Kainth Show, and thank you for tuning in. Now, just before the break, we spoke to Liz Vincent, and she spoke to us about past life regression in terms of how that can help people, and we were talking about reincarnation. What I want to do now is tell you a little bit purpose of life and why we are here. I'm just going to begin by saying that when I came out of hospital, when I wanted answers to kind of what was going on in my life, I had very little time to work, so I spent a lot of time doing a lot of research. I read many scriptures, and I went into deep, deep meditation. And for 2 years, I actually isolated myself from the real world and trying to find all the answers out. What I found is that basically we are, bottom line, spiritual beings just having a human experience. So I'll repeat that again. You are just spiritual beings just having a human experience. So let me explain this to you. We call this what we call the physical earth, or physical plane. The reason why we call it the physical plane is because you need a physical body to reside in this world. Without that, you cannot be seen, you cannot be heard, and you cannot talk. But we descended down here from the greater planes above. We all know that we were born. We all know that one day we're going to die. We're here for a limited amount of space. So why are we here? So we descended down from what we call a greater plane above. Many of those scriptures call it, some people call it kingdom of heaven. Some people call it paradise, and they're different names. But I've researched there are 7 layers. And each layer of heaven has its own region, its own ruler, its own scent, and its own beauty. But when you are in the level of heaven, you cannot move higher up the ranks internally, if you like. You need to, in order to get soul growth, because in heaven, there is no karma, there is no sinning over there. So in order to get soul growth, in order to really progress ourselves, the only way to do that is to descend down onto what we call the physical world, to basically increase what we call our karmic balance, to get soul growth, to put things right, hence allowing us, when we finish on this world, to then, if you like, elevate ourselves to a higher plane than when we came before. And that's the real purpose. So, how do we do that? Well, first of all, we've got to realize that you chose to come down to the physical plane. Nobody else did. Not God, not anybody. You chose, you wanted to come down. Why? Because you want soul growth. And so you chose your parents. You chose your siblings. You chose your family that you wanted to be around. You chose everything. So the whole purpose of life basically is to get evolution. Let me explain this to you. In the day, like I said to you, we are spiritual beings just having a human experience. And inside of all of us, there's what we call the soul. Some people call it consciousness, some people call it divine, some people call it Lord, God. Call it what you like, but it resides inside of every single one of us. So the purpose of this is that we need to bring evolution. So any movement of that soul going towards the Creator is called evolution. And any movement away from the Creator is called involution. In order to live a happy and successful and, if you like, peaceful life, you need to find the evolution. But let me just give you an example. The people that are in your life today are not here by coincidence, they're here for a reason. So we need to fulfill those responsibilities. But I'll just give you an example. One time, I was in hospital, and I regularly go into hospital to do a blood test. And at this time, I went to the cafeteria, and I sat down, I was having a coffee. And there was an elderly gentleman next to me. And we started talking, and he was telling me why he was in hospital and what his problem was. And we connected very, very well. And he must have got a deep trust for me. So he asked me for a favor, and I said, yeah, what is that favor? He said, I would like you to go and see this person for me. And if you can can you tell them to come and visit me at hospital? So, yeah, so that's no problem at all. So he gave me a name and he gave me an address. He didn't have a number. And so basically that day, I went back home and I basically rang X-Directory. I rang up the 118 to see if I could get the number for the house. Saves me going out there. And unfortunately, it was X-Directory. So then basically the next day, I got into my car, went to Coventry, and I went to visit this house. And I knocked on the door and I asked for this gentleman. And they said, unfortunately, they've moved on a couple of years ago. And I said, have you got a forwarding address? And they said, she looked around, she goes, yes, we do. And they don't live so far away. So I got back into my car and I went down to this address and I knocked onto the door and I basically asked for the man. And this woman answered the door and she said, unfortunately, he passed away 2 years ago. So I went back into my car. The next day I went to see this man in the hospital. And when I gave him the news, he was so disappointed. The look on his face was like, it was like, I felt that, what's the problem, And he said, Amit, I needed to tell this person that I actually forgive him. But now he has passed, I've now got unfinished business with him. And this is what life's about. Life is a ticking time bomb. We don't know how long we have got. And like Liz Vincent said, some of the times we're not able to move forward in life is because we can't, just give forgiveness. And when you give that forgiveness, you are able then to move on. You're able then to kind of fulfill and complete relationships. And this is the most important thing that we do. But you've got to look at it, the fact that, okay, sometimes you think to myself, okay, why am I in what I am now? Why am I here? I don't know if some of you have seen the film Deja Vu, but you've got to imagine yourself, if you are sitting in a layer of heaven, looking down onto what we call the physical plane, and you know that when you come down onto this physical plane, you are not going to be able to remember anything of your soul existence. So what do? You have to pre-plan while sitting in heaven that, okay, I want to be born here, I want my parents to be this, and at the age of, for example, 10, I want to go through some hardship with some relationships. At the age of 15, I want to go through some health problems. At the age of 25, I want to basically go through some wealth problems. So you pre-plan all this beforehand. Why do you pre-plan this? Because you want to put yourself through some hardships because you know that you have to bring evolution. Otherwise, if you put these hardships in your life, life would be sailing and then you wouldn't even reflect why you are here. And this is what it's about. So you put these, events in your life, you put them there. So then that way you can remember them. So let me give an example of the film of Deja Vu. Denzel Washington has to basically go back into time. And when he goes back, he has to then remember why he's there. So before he does go back, he plants in the house certain messages, so then when he does go back, he puts them on the fridge in certain other places. So when he goes back, he remembers, okay, I've come to do this. And similarly, such as mine and your life. We have put those events in our life, so we remember that at the end of the day, ultimately, I am here because I need to bring evolution. I am here to get soul growth. I am here to basically improve myself and the karmic relationships all around us. But this is why we have to go have these events to get these constant reminders. So you don't just put one event, we always need constant reminders in order to kind of progress. But this is the most important thing. And I get, yes, we have to live in the world. And yes, we've all got to work. And yes, we've all got to earn money. And we've all got relationships. But the most important thing to do is don't wait for spirituality. So many people always tell me, Amit, you know what? I'm going to find spirituality when I retire. Or I'm going to find spirituality when my son goes to university. Or I'm going to find spirituality when I get a bigger house, or I can get a room where I can meditate. The honest truth is, there is no perfect time for when you can find spirituality. You just have to get onto that, on it straight away, because it's never going to be the right time to do anything. That's the end of the presentation. And any questions?
Hi. I was hoping I could get some advice, really. So me and my dad don't get along that well. We sometimes struggle to see eye to eye, and I find it hard to communicate with him. What would you advise?
In life, bottom line is, everybody in life doesn't intentionally do the wrong thing. Everybody in that time, at that moment, are always talking about what they feel is right. So when you are speaking with your dad, all you've got is a conflict of interest. But you've got to kind of, and sometimes you've got to see it from his angle, what he's giving you, he loves you. He doesn't want to take you off course. But you've also got a viewpoint that basically you think is right. But sometimes in life, you just got to listen to what your father wants, but sometimes you've got to come to that compromise because because he's right in his way, because he's seen life experience, and he doesn't want his daughter to kind of go off track. But I can see where probably you're coming from, because obviously you want to probably complete some sort of objective, which is why you're not seeing eye to eye. But what you've got to realize is that in the day, you've got to come to some sort of compromise. Because what I found in life, without your parents', if you like, without your parents' support, without your parents' grace, without them backing you, it's very, very hard in life to achieve what you need to achieve. So it's very important to kind of have them along with you so that you can then take them on your journey. Does that make sense? Great. Well, that's the end of the show. And so that's all we've got time for. So again, thank you for coming out today, and thank you for Homer tuning in. Now, if you'd like to be a guest on the show, or you would like to be part of the audience, then please do go onto the website, amitkainth.co.uk, and get in touch with us via email or the telephone number. And so we'll see you next week on more Get Closer to the Truth. Thank you very much, guys.
This show is sponsored by Cousins, a true family business.